Veltar floated above the blue-green world, his crystalline body catching starlight and turning it into food. For 3 cycles, he had watched this small planet spin around its yellow star. His job was simple: find new life and see if it would grow strong enough to matter. Most life died quickly. Some lasted longer but never left their home worlds. Very few became important enough for the Cathara Council to care about. Veltar had found 47 dead worlds and 12 with simple animals. This world had something different. The creatures here used fire. Veltar had seen fire users before. Many species learned to make flames for warmth and cooking. But these creatures did something strange with their fires. They carried burning sticks like weapons. They made fire where they wanted it, when they wanted it. Below him, a group of the creatures moved through thick grass. They walked on 2 legs and had no fur or scales to protect them. Their skin looked soft and weak, but they carried fire. The creature leading the group was called Deho by the others. He was bigger than most, with dark hair and strong arms. In his hand he held a burning branch. Behind him 20 more creatures followed. Each one carried fire too. Veltar watched as they moved toward a herd of large, hairy beasts. The beasts were 10 times bigger than the creatures. They had long tusks and thick skin. Any smart species would run from such dangerous animals. But these creatures did not run. Deho raised his burning branch and made loud sounds. The other creatures spread out in a line. They all held their fires high. The big beasts looked up and saw the flames. Their small eyes showed fear. Interesting, Veltar thought. The large animals fear the fire more than the creatures who carry it. The creatures began to move forward. They waved their fires and made more loud sounds. The big beasts started to back away. Slowly, the creatures pushed the animals toward a cliff. Veltar watched in surprise. These small, weak creatures were hunting animals that could crush them easily, but they were winning because of fire. Deho threw his burning branch at the feet of the biggest beast. The animal jumped back in fear. Other creatures threw their fires too. Soon the beasts were running toward the cliff edge, trying to get away from the flames. The plan worked. 3 of the big animals fell off the cliff. The creatures below cheered and danced around their fires. They had food for many days, but Veltar noticed something else. The creatures did not just use fire as a tool. They seemed to become different when they held flames. Their eyes grew brighter. They stood taller. They moved with more confidence. That night, Veltar floated down closer to their camp. He made himself invisible so they could not see him. The creatures sat around a large fire in the center of their group. An old female named Bora stood near the flames. Bora was smaller than Deho, but the others listened to her words carefully. She threw something into the fire that made it change colors. Green and blue flames danced upward. The creatures made soft sounds of wonder. Fire gives us strength, Bora said in their simple language. Fire gives us power over the dark. Fire makes us more than what we are. She reached into the flames with her bare hand. Veltar expected to see her skin burn, but she pulled out a glowing coal and held it without pain. The other creatures gasped. We are the children of fire, Bora continued. Other animals run from flames, but we make friends with fire. We carry its power inside us. Veltar felt a chill run through his crystalline body. This was not normal behavior. Most species feared fire because it could hurt them. But these creatures seemed to draw strength from it. Bora placed the glowing coal back in the fire. As she did, Veltar saw something that made him doubt his own senses. For just a moment, the female seemed to glow with inner light. Her skin looked like it had fire under it. The ceremony continued for hours. Each creature took turns holding fire and speaking to it like an old friend. Children who were barely old enough to walk reached toward the flames without fear. Their parents did not stop them. When the fire began to die down, Deho stood up. He picked up a piece of burning wood and looked at the others. Tomorrow we hunt the cave bears, he said. They are bigger and stronger than us. They have sharp teeth and claws, but we have something they do not have. He held the burning wood higher. The flames reflected in his dark eyes. We have fire, and fire makes us gods, the other creatures cheered. They beat their hands together and made loud sounds. But Veltar heard something else in their voices. It was not just excitement. It was hunger. Hunger for battle. Hunger for victory. As the creatures went to sleep, Veltar floated higher into the sky. He needed to think about what he had seen. These creatures were not like others he had studied. They did not just use fire as a tool. They seemed to worship it. More than that, they seemed to become one with it. He opened his communication device and began to record his report. Day 3 of observation. Species shows unusual relationship with combustion. Initial assessment of primitive tool use appears incorrect. These creatures demonstrate unprecedented control over fire. More concerning, they show no natural fear response to flames. Veltar paused. How could he explain what he had seen? How could he tell the council that these creatures seem to absorb power from fire itself? Recommendation: extend observation period. Species may represent unknown form of energy-based evolution. Their mastery of fire appears to be changing them in ways not yet understood. He closed the communication device and looked down at the sleeping camp. The fire still burned in the center, smaller now but never completely dying. Even in sleep, the creatures kept their fire alive. Veltar had studied hundreds of species. He had seen creatures that could fly, swim in acid, and survive in the cold of space. But he had never seen creatures that seemed to burn from the inside out. As he prepared to return to his ship, one of the creatures stirred. It was a young male who stood up and walked to the fire. Without any fear, he reached into the flames and pulled out a burning stick. For a moment, the flame and the creature seemed to be one thing. Then the male went back to sleep, still holding the burning wood. Veltar shivered again. Something told him these creatures would not stay on this small world forever. Something told him they would carry their fire to the stars. And when they did, the galaxy would never be the same. 800 years had passed since Veltar last visited the small blue world. Time moved differently for his crystalline people. What seemed like yesterday to him was many generations for the fire creatures below. He expected to find them still living in caves, still hunting with burning sticks. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible. The creatures had built cities, and those cities burned with fires hotter than any natural flame. Veltar descended through the clouds and found himself above a place the creatures called a forge. Inside a stone building, a male named Hyonwoo worked with metal and fire. But this was not the simple fire Veltar remembered. This fire was white-hot and roared like a living beast. Hyonwoo stood before the burning furnace wearing thick leather clothes. Sweat covered his face, but he showed no fear of the intense heat. With long metal tools, he pulled a glowing piece of iron from the flames. The metal was so hot it hurt to look at, even with Veltar's advanced vision. But Hyonwoo hammered it with steady strikes. Each blow sent sparks flying around the room. The sparks landed on his skin and clothes but did not seem to hurt him. Hotter, Hyonwoo called to his assistant. The steel needs more heat. The young helper threw more coal into the furnace. The flames grew taller and turned from white to blue. The temperature inside the building rose to levels that should have killed any living creature. But Hyonwoo stepped closer to the fire. He thrust the metal back into the flames and worked the bellows himself. The fire responded to his touch, growing hotter and more focused. Veltar's instrument showed temperatures that were impossible for simple combustion. How is he making it so hot? Veltar wondered. Their chemistry should not allow such temperatures. After hours of work, Hyonwoo pulled the finished blade from the fire. It gleamed like captured starlight. The sword was perfectly straight and sharp enough to cut stone. But more than that, it seemed to hold some of the fire inside it. When Hyonwoo tested the blade, it moved through the air with a soft humming sound. Where it struck metal targets, it left glowing marks that stayed hot for minutes. The fire lives in the metal now, Hyonwoo said to his assistant. This blade will never grow cold. It will serve its master until the stars die. Veltar flew to another part of the city where he found more impossible things. A female named Jin-A stood before a group of warriors teaching them about war, but her lessons were all about fire. The enemy thinks their stone walls protect them, Jin-A said. They are wrong. We do not need to break their walls. We will burn them. She showed the warriors clay pots filled with a thick, dark liquid. When she threw one against a stone wall, it burst into flames that water could not put out. The fire stuck to everything it touched and burned for hours. This is Greek fire, she explained. It burns on water. It burns underwater. Nothing can stop it except time. The warriors watched in amazement as the flames ate through thick stone. One young soldier asked how such a thing was possible. We learned to make fire do what we want, Jin-A replied. Other people use fire to cook food and stay warm. We use fire to win wars. She demonstrated other fire weapons. Arrows with burning tips that could set entire buildings ablaze. Catapults that threw pots of liquid fire into enemy camps. Even shields painted with images of flames that scared enemy horses. But the strangest thing was how the warriors reacted to fire. When Jin-A lit a large bonfire, they did not step back from the heat. Instead, they moved closer. Their eyes reflected the flames, and they stood taller and stronger. "Fire makes us brave," one warrior said. "When I hold a torch, I feel like I can fight 100 men." Jin-A nodded. "Fire is our ancestor and our child. We were born from fire, and we feed fire with our enemies." That night, Veltar visited the workshop of Taimin, an old male who mixed chemicals and studied flames. Taimin's laboratory was filled with strange smells and colored fires that burned in glass containers. "I am close to something important," Taimin told his young student. "I have been trying to capture the essence of fire itself, to hold its power in a small space." He mixed yellow powder with other chemicals and placed the mixture in a metal tube. When he lit it, there was a tremendous explosion that shook the entire building. Smoke filled the room, and the smell of burned chemicals made the air thick. But Taimin was not hurt. He laughed with joy and danced around the destroyed table. "I did it," he shouted. "I made lightning in a bottle. I made thunder from fire." The explosion had created something new, a powder that could make instant fire more powerful than any furnace. Taimin called it fire powder and began making more immediately. Veltar realized this was a turning point. These creatures had not just learned to use fire, they had learned to create new kinds of fire. They were bending the laws of chemistry through sheer will and determination. Over the following days, Veltar observed more impossible things. Blacksmiths who could shape metal with their bare hands when it was hot enough. Warriors who seemed to absorb strength from the flames of their torches. Children who played games with fire that should have killed them. Most disturbing of all, the creatures seemed to be changing physically. Their skin was thicker and more resistant to heat. Their eyes could see better in bright firelight. Their lungs could breathe smoke that would poison other species. When Veltar tested the air around their cities, he found chemicals that should have been deadly, but the creatures breathed them easily. They were adapting to live in an environment full of fire and smoke. One evening he watched as Hyunwoo, Jinny, and Taimin met together to share their discoveries. Hyunwoo brought his fire-forged weapons. Jinny brought her liquid flames. Taimin brought his explosive powder. "We are changing the world," Hyunwoo said as they sat around a fire that burned without fuel. "Our ancestors used fire to hunt animals. We use fire to hunt our enemies." "But this is just the beginning," Jinny added. "Imagine if we could make fire that burns cold, or fire that burns through stone, or fire that burns in the emptiness between stars." Taimin stirred the flames with a metal rod. "I believe we can do all of these things. Fire is not just heat and light. Fire is pure change, and we are the masters of change." As they talked, Veltar noticed that each of them seemed to glow slightly in the darkness. It was as if they had tiny fires burning inside their bodies. Their eyes reflected light that was not there. Their breath created small clouds even in warm air. "They are becoming something new," Veltar recorded in his log. "They are not just using fire as a tool. They are incorporating fire into their very biology. They are evolving to become creatures of flame." He sent an urgent message to the Kithara Council. "Species designation. Urgent monitoring required. Humans have achieved impossible mastery over combustion and are showing signs of fire-based evolution. Their technological advancement rate is unprecedented. Recommend immediate long-term study." As Veltar prepared to leave the world again, he looked down at the cities full of impossible fires. Smoke rose from thousands of forges, furnaces, and workshops. The creatures had covered their world with flames that burned day and night. They were no longer the simple cave dwellers he had first observed. They were becoming something else. Something that could bend fire to their will and make it part of themselves. And Veltar had the disturbing feeling that this was still only the beginning of their transformation. Veltar returned to find the blue world transformed beyond recognition. Where once there had been forests and grasslands, now tall stone buildings reached toward the sky. Black smoke poured from countless chimneys, and the air itself seemed to burn with heat and energy. The humans had learned to burn their entire planet. He descended through the thick, smoky atmosphere and found himself above a massive factory. Inside, a human named Wu Jin supervised hundreds of workers who fed coal into enormous furnaces. The fires never stopped burning day or night. These were not the simple forge fires Veltar had seen centuries before. These flames were controlled by complex machines that breathed like giant metal lungs. Steam hissed from pipes that ran throughout the building, carrying the power of fire to wheels and hammers that never tired. Woojin walked among the machinery without any protection from the incredible heat. His workers moved close to furnaces that glowed white-hot. They shoveled coal into flames that should have melted their flesh, but they showed no discomfort. "More coal," Woojin shouted over the roar of the fires. "The furnaces must burn hotter. We need more steam." A young worker ran up to him, sweat covering his face but his eyes bright with excitement. "Sir, the new boiler is ready. Engineer So Young says it can create twice as much power as the old ones." Woojin smiled and walked to where So Young stood beside a massive iron machine. Steam escaped from every joint and the metal glowed red from the heat inside. The machine should have exploded from the pressure, but it ran smoothly. So Young was a small woman, but she showed no fear of the dangerous machinery around her. She placed her hand on the hot metal and nodded with satisfaction. "The temperature is perfect," she said. "This engine can burn coal more completely than any design we have tried before. It wastes almost no energy." Veltar scanned the machine with his instruments. The readings made no sense. The engine was operating far beyond what the laws of physics should allow. The pressure inside was enormous, but the metal held without breaking. The temperature was hot enough to melt iron, but the machine stayed solid. How are they doing this? Veltar wondered. Their material should not be able to withstand such conditions. As he watched, So Young made adjustments to the engine that made it run even hotter. She seemed to know exactly what each piece of metal could handle, as if she could feel the stress in the materials through her fingertips. "We can make it burn cleaner too," she told Woojin. "If we change the airflow here and add more fuel here, we can reduce the smoke while increasing the power." Woojin looked impressed. "You understand these machines better than anyone. It is as if you can speak to the fires themselves." So Young laughed, but there was truth in what Woojin said. When she worked with the engines, she moved with confidence that came from deep understanding. She knew how hot to make the fires, how much pressure the metal could take, and how to get the most power from each piece of coal. Veltar flew to other parts of the factory and found more impossible things. Workers who could handle red-hot metal with their bare hands for short periods. Furnaces that burned so efficiently they produced almost no waste. Steam engines that ran smoother and faster than their design should have allowed. But the most disturbing thing happened when he observed an accident. A boiler exploded, sending scalding steam and burning coal throughout the workshop. Several workers were caught in the blast, including a young man named Kiho. Veltar expected to see terrible injuries. The heat from the explosion should have killed any creature instantly. But when the steam cleared, Kiho stood up and brushed coal dust from his clothes. He was completely unharmed. "Are you hurt?" So Young called out as she ran to check on him. Kiho shook his head. "I feel fine. Actually, I feel better than fine." The heat felt good. Veltar scanned Kiho with every instrument he had. The readings were impossible. The human's body temperature was higher than normal, but he showed no signs of fever or illness. His skin showed no burns despite being exposed to steam that should have cooked him alive. More than that, Kiho seemed stronger after the accident. He lifted pieces of broken metal that had taken 2 men to carry before. He worked for hours without getting tired. His eyes were brighter and he moved with more energy. The heat made him stronger, Veltar recorded in his log. Exposure to extreme temperature that should have killed him has instead enhanced his physical abilities. This should not be possible. Over the following weeks, Veltar observed Kiho carefully. The young worker continued to show increased strength and endurance. He could work closer to the furnaces than other humans. He needed less food and less sleep. Most strangely, he seemed to prefer being near the hottest fires. But Kiho was not unique. Throughout the factory, Veltar found other workers who had been changed by exposure to extreme heat. They were all stronger, faster, and more resistant to temperature than normal humans. They are evolving, Veltar realized. The heat and energy of their machines is changing them on a biological level. He expanded his observations to other factories throughout the human world. Everywhere he looked, he found the same pattern. Humans were building bigger and hotter fires than ever before. Their cities burned coal and oil in quantities that should have poisoned the air and killed all life. But instead of dying, the humans were thriving. In one city, he found factories that ran day and night, covering the sky with black smoke. But the humans who lived there breathed the polluted air easily. Their lungs had adapted to filter out the harmful chemicals. In another place, he found foundries where humans worked with molten metal that glowed like small suns. The workers moved through temperatures that should have been lethal, but they showed no discomfort. Most impressive of all, he found power plants where humans had learned to burn fuel so efficiently that they created more energy than should have been possible. The machines they built were simple, but they operated beyond theoretical limits. Wu Jin's factory became the largest and most productive in the region. His workers could produce more goods in a day than entire cities had made in years past. But the real change was in the workers themselves. They were becoming something new. "Look at what we have accomplished," Wu Jin said to So Young as they stood on a platform overlooking their domain. Below them, hundreds of fires burned in perfect harmony. Steam engines drove machinery that turned raw materials into finished goods. "Our ancestors used fire to cook meat and stay warm," So Young replied. "We use fire to remake the world itself. We burn earth and turn it into power. We burn power and turn it into progress." She pointed to the workers moving among the machines. "And look at them. They are stronger than their fathers were. They can work in heat that would have killed their grandfathers." "We are not just changing the world. We are changing ourselves," Wu Jin nodded. "Fire has always been our teacher. Now it is making us into something greater." As Veltar listened to their conversation, he felt a chill of fear run through his crystalline body. These humans were not just using industrial technology. They were becoming industrial themselves. Their bodies were adapting to live and work in conditions that would kill most other species. He sent another urgent report to the Kythra Council. "Human evolution has accelerated dramatically. They are developing biological adaptations to extreme heat and toxic environments at an impossible rate. Their industrial development is beyond anything in our databases. They are becoming creatures that live and thrive in fire itself." The response from the council was immediate. "Continue observation. Do not interfere. We must understand what they are becoming before they spread beyond their world." But as Veltar looked down at the burning cities and smoking factories, he wondered if it was already too late. The humans were changing so fast that he could barely keep track of their progress, and something told him they would not stay on this small world much longer. When Veltar returned to the human world this time, his instruments detected something that made his crystalline form tremble with fear. The humans had learned to split the atom itself. They had unlocked the fire that burned inside stars. He descended through the atmosphere and found a secret facility hidden in a desert. Inside a massive concrete building, a human named Dong Su worked with forces that could destroy planets. But he handled the deadly materials as casually as his ancestors had handled burning wood. Dong Su stood before a complex machine that contained the heart of an atom. Radiation poured from the device in waves that should have killed every living thing for miles around. But Dong Su wore only a thin coat and worked with his bare hands. "The reaction is stable," he reported to his assistants. "We are maintaining fusion at temperatures of 100 million degrees. The energy output is exactly what we predicted." Veltar's instruments screamed warnings about the radiation levels. No known life form could survive in such an environment. But Dong Su and his team worked calmly, as if they were tending a simple campfire. "How much energy can we extract?" asked one of the assistants. Dong Su smiled. "Enough to power an entire city. We are burning hydrogen and turning it into helium. Just like the sun does. We have brought stellar fire to Earth." He made adjustments to the machine that increased the fusion reaction. The temperature inside the chamber rose to levels that existed only in the cores of stars. But the human-built container held the fire without melting. This should be impossible, Veltar thought. Their materials cannot withstand such temperatures. Their bodies cannot survive such radiation, yet they work with stellar fire as if it were ordinary flame. At an airfield hundreds of miles away, Veltar found a human pilot named Mi Kyung preparing for a dangerous mission. She was going to fly through the upper atmosphere where cosmic radiation was strongest. The mission would expose her to energy levels that killed most creatures instantly. But Mi Kyung showed no fear. "The new engine design needs testing at maximum altitude," she explained to her ground crew. "I will fly higher than anyone has flown before." Her aircraft was unlike anything Veltar had seen. It burned fuel so efficiently that it produced thrust beyond what conventional chemistry should allow. The exhaust glowed with colors that suggested nuclear reactions were taking place in the engine itself. Mi Kyung climbed into the cockpit and started the engine. The sound was like controlled thunder. Flames erupted from the exhaust that were hotter and brighter than any normal fire. The aircraft lifted off and climbed straight up, leaving a trail of plasma in the sky. Veltar followed her flight with his sensors. As the aircraft climbed higher, the radiation levels increased dramatically. By the time Mi-kyung reached her target altitude, she was exposed to cosmic rays that should have fried her nervous system in seconds. But her vital signs remained normal. She flew through radiation storms that destroyed electronic equipment, but her aircraft continued to function. She spent hours in an environment that was more hostile than the surface of most planets, but she showed no signs of distress. When she finally landed, Mi-kyung was not weakened by her ordeal. If anything, she seemed more energetic than before. Her skin had a slight glow and her eyes were brighter. The flight was perfect, she reported. The engine performed beyond specifications. And I felt wonderful up there. The cosmic radiation felt warm and pleasant like sunlight. Veltar's medical scans of Mi-kyung revealed changes that defied explanation. Her cells were processing radiation and converting it into usable energy. Her bone density had increased. Her muscle tissue was stronger. Exposure to cosmic radiation had made her healthier, not sicker. At a military testing site, Veltar observed the most disturbing developments yet. A soldier named Jae-sung volunteered to test the effects of nuclear weapons on human troops. He stood just a few miles from ground zero when they detonated an atomic bomb. The explosion created a miniature sun on the Earth's surface. Temperatures rose to millions of degrees. Radiation poured out in waves that sterilized everything for miles around. The shockwave flattened buildings and turned sand into glass. Jae-sung should have been vaporized instantly, but when the smoke cleared, he was still standing. His uniform was burned away and his skin was red from heat exposure, but he was alive and conscious. More than that, he walked toward the crater where the bomb had exploded, seemingly drawn to the residual radiation. "I feel strange," he reported over his radio. "Not sick strange. Strong strange, like I have more energy than I have ever had before." Medical teams rushed to examine him, expecting to find fatal radiation sickness. Instead, they found a human whose body was processing radioactive isotopes and converting them into cellular energy. His strength had doubled. His reflexes were faster. His senses were sharper. "The radiation is not hurting me," Jae-sung explained. "It is feeding me. I can feel it making me stronger." Over the following weeks, Veltar watched as Jae-sung continued to change. His body became more efficient at using energy. He needed less food and less sleep. His healing rate increased dramatically. Wounds that should have taken weeks to heal closed in days. Most remarkably, Jae-sung could now survive in environments that would kill normal humans. He could work in areas with high radiation without protection. He could withstand temperatures that would cook ordinary flesh. He had become something new. "They are not just using nuclear fire," Veltar recorded in his increasingly frantic reports. "They are incorporating it into their biology. Exposure to stellar-level radiation is making them stronger, not weaker. They are evolving to become living fusion reactors." The Cathara Council's response was immediate and alarmed. "This is beyond anything in our evolutionary databases. No known species can adapt to nuclear radiation. They should all be dead. What are these creatures becoming?" Veltar had no answer. He watched as more humans underwent similar transformations. Nuclear power plant workers who seemed to absorb energy directly from radioactive materials. Test pilots who flew through radiation belts and came back stronger. Scientists who handled plutonium with their bare hands and suffered no ill effects. The most disturbing discovery came when he observed Dongsu's latest experiment. The scientist had built a device that contained a controlled nuclear explosion in a chamber no larger than a room. The reaction produced energy equivalent to a small star, but the human-built materials contained it perfectly. "We have learned to hold stellar fire in our hands," Dongsu explained to his team. "Our ancestors worshipped fire from a distance. We make fire do our bidding." He reached out and touched the containment chamber with his bare hand. The metal was hot enough to melt copper, but Dongsu felt no pain. His skin did not burn. If anything, he seemed to draw strength from the contact. "Fire has always been our teacher," Dongsu continued. "It taught us to cook food and forge metal. It taught us to power machines and light cities. Now it is teaching us to become more than human." As if to demonstrate his point, Dongsu opened a small port in the containment chamber. Pure nuclear fire streamed out. bathing him in radiation that should have killed him instantly. But he stood in the beam of stellar energy and smiled. "We are becoming children of the stars themselves," he said. Veltar fled back to his ship, his crystalline body trembling with fear. The humans had not just learned to use nuclear fire. They were becoming nuclear fire. They were transforming themselves into living stars. He sent one final desperate message to the Kythera Council. "Emergency alert. Human species has achieved biological fusion capability. They are no longer strictly biological life forms. They are becoming energy beings. Recommend immediate council session to determine response." As his ship lifted away from the blue world, Veltar looked back at the planet that now glowed with the light of controlled atomic fires. The humans had built hundreds of nuclear reactors, each one a miniature star burning on the surface of their world. But they were not content to stop there. Already he could see them building rockets powered by nuclear fire. Soon they would carry their stellar flames to other worlds. And when they did, Veltar feared that nothing in the galaxy would be safe from their burning touch. The humans had reached the stars and they brought fire with them. Veltar watched from his observation post as the human fleet approached the Kythera home system. What he saw defied every law of physics he understood. The human ships did not travel through space. They burned through it. Admiral Hansol commanded the lead vessel from a bridge that glowed with contained nuclear fire. His ship was not built of metal and plastic like normal spacecraft. It seemed to be made of crystallized flame itself, burning without fuel and generating thrust that should have been impossible. "All ships, prepare for combat acceleration," Hansol ordered. His voice carried clearly across space, though there should have been no way for sound to travel in the vacuum. The human fleet responded by burning brighter. Their engines did not expel exhaust like conventional rockets. Instead, they seemed to push against space itself, using pure energy to move forward at speeds that broke the known laws of physics. Veltar scanned the ships with every instrument he had. The readings made no sense. The human vessels were converting matter directly into energy, and using that energy to bend space-time around them. They were not flying through space, they were creating new space as they moved. "Impossible," Veltar whispered. "No species can achieve such technology. They are somehow using nuclear fire to rewrite reality itself." The Kythera defense fleet moved to intercept the humans. Their crystalline warships were powered by stellar collectors that gathered energy from nearby stars. They had weapons that could shatter planets and shields that could stop light itself. But when they fired on the human ships, something impossible happened. The human vessels absorbed the energy attacks. Captain Yuna piloted her fighter craft directly into a beam weapon that should have vaporized her instantly. Instead of destroying her ship, the energy seemed to make it stronger. The hull glowed brighter, and her engine output increased dramatically. "Thank you for the power boost," Yuna transmitted to the Kythera ship that had fired on her. "But now it is our turn." Her fighter craft accelerated beyond anything the Kythera had ever seen. It moved so fast that space itself seemed to ripple around it. When Yuna fired back, her weapons were not conventional missiles or energy beams. She fired pure nuclear fire. The blast that erupted from her small ship contained the fury of a supernova compressed into a focused beam. When it struck the Kythera warship, the crystalline vessel simply ceased to exist. It did not explode or break apart. It was converted instantly into energy and scattered across space. "How are they doing this?" the Kythera fleet commander demanded over the communication channels. "Their technology should not be capable of such destruction," Admiral Hansol answered personally. His image appeared on screens throughout the Kythera fleet, and Veltar was shocked by what he saw. The human admiral was no longer entirely biological. His skin had a metallic sheen that pulsed with inner fire. His eyes glowed like small stars. When he spoke, his breath created visible clouds of superheated plasma. "You want to know our secret?" Hansol asked. "We learned something long ago that you never understood. We learned that fire is not just a tool. Fire is life itself, and we have become living fire." To demonstrate his point, Hansol reached out and touched the hull of his ship with his bare hand. Where his skin made contact, the metal became brighter and hotter. The entire vessel responded to his touch, burning with increased intensity. "We do not build our ships," Hansol continued. "We grow them. We do not fuel our engines, we are our engines. Every human aboard this fleet is a living nuclear reactor. We carry the fire of stars in our hearts." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. The human ships moved through space like living flames, consuming energy attacks and converting them into fuel for their own weapons. They fought with a fury that came not from anger, but from the nuclear fire that burned in their very cells. Veltar watched in horror as ship after ship of the Cathera fleet was destroyed or simply absorbed by the human vessels. When a human ship was damaged, it did not break apart. Instead, it seemed to heal itself, regrowing damaged sections from pure energy. Captain Yuna's fighter was struck by a weapon that should have split her craft in half. But instead of destroying her ship, the damage simply vanished. The fighter reformed itself around her, becoming stronger and more powerful than before. "We cannot die in the fire," Yuna explained to her amazed enemies. "Fire is what we are. You cannot kill fire with fire. You can only make it burn brighter." Engineer Seok Jin, working aboard Han Solo's flagship, demonstrated the true extent of human evolution. When enemy fire damaged the ship's main power core, he did not repair it with tools and spare parts. Instead, he placed his hands on the broken machinery and fed it energy directly from his own body. The power core responded by burning hotter and more efficiently than it had when first built. Under Seokjin's touch, the human technology evolved and improved in real time. "Our machines are not separate from us," Seokjin explained to the watching galaxy. "We are our machines. Every human is a living spacecraft, a walking weapon, a breathing star. We have become what our ancestors worshipped. We have become fire itself." The Cathera fleet commander tried one final desperate attack. He ordered all remaining ships to focus their fire on Han Solo's flagship. The combined energy of a dozen stellar collectors struck the human vessel at the same moment. The explosion should have destroyed everything within light years. Instead, Admiral Han Solo's ship absorbed every bit of energy and used it to fuel a transformation that defied belief. The vessel grew larger and brighter until it rivaled a small star in intensity. When the light faded, the ship had become something new, a hybrid of technology and living fire that pulsed with conscious thought. "You have given us a great gift," Han Solo said to the defeated Cathara fleet. "Your energy has helped us take the next step in our evolution. We are no longer human as you understand the term. We are something new. We are living stars." Veltar fled back to the observation post where he had first watched humans discover fire 50,000 years ago. His crystalline body was cracked from stress, and his mind struggled to process what he had witnessed. The humans had not conquered space through superior technology. They had conquered it by becoming something that existed beyond the normal laws of physics. They were creatures of pure energy who could manipulate matter and force through will alone. "Final report," Veltar transmitted to the Kithara Council. "Human species no longer exists as biological life. They have transcended physical limitations and become beings of living nuclear fire. They do not use weapons, they are weapons. They do not pilot ships, they are ships. Resistance is impossible. They are what fire becomes when it learns to think." The response from the Council was immediate but futile. All Cathara forces are ordered to withdraw from human space. Do not engage. Do not provoke. We are dealing with creatures that have become forces of nature itself. But as Veltar watched the human fleet spread out across the galaxy, he realized it was too late for withdrawal. The humans were not conquering worlds, they were transforming them. Everywhere they went, they left fires that burned without fuel and created new forms of life. They had become the fire that would remake the entire galaxy in their image. Admiral Han Solo's final transmission reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. "We are the children of fire, and fire has no limits. We burn in the cold of space. We burn in the heart of stars. We burn in the space between dimensions. We are coming to every world, and we bring the gift of flame. Do not fear us, join us. Become fire as we have become fire. Together we will burn until the universe itself learns to live." Veltar looked up at the stars and saw them flickering with new colors. The humans were already changing the fundamental nature of space itself. They were not just spreading fire through the galaxy. They were turning the galaxy into fire. And deep in his crystalline heart, Veltar felt something he had never experienced before. A warmth that had nothing to do with stellar radiation. A hunger for change and transformation that burned like a small flame in his consciousness. The fire was calling to him too,